Welcome to Live to Learn, and today we're going to talk about the important question of should you rent or should you buy? Deciding whether to rent or buy is one of the most important financial decisions that you can make for yourself, so good job tuning into this video. So why is it so important? Because the roof over your head is often the largest expense that you pay on a monthly basis, so it's important to get it right. So I'm going to walk you through this 4-step process on how you can strategically position yourself to actually make the best decision. All right, so first steps in the rent to buy process is budget. So you want to go through your finances, right? And step number 1 is always assessing your monthly income. Step 2 is assessing how much you want to save every month. Target for at least 10 to 20% of your earnings. And then look at all of your fixed expenses every month. And that's really the bucket of money that you want to shoot for to keep the house that you're living in under. Over my last 5-6 years of living, I've always targeted to try to keep my living expenses as low as possible. I always target for under $1,300 a month because that keeps me on track in my wealth building years to really accelerate my growth potential. So once you figure out your budget and how much you're willing to put towards your house, again, that's not a set number, but it's a target, right? Your targets are good to have because that helps you have a focused mindset and stay within your means. Number 2 is identify your location and your needs. This is important because you want to be happy with where you're living. You don't want to be saving a bunch of money but miserable because you have the longest commute ever or you're further away from your friends so you don't see them as often. So you just want to assess what's the locations that you're acceptable living in, and then looking at what are your needs, right? Your square footage that you'll probably require, your beds, baths, right? Again, try to minimize those and get a feel for that between your budget, but you really want to think about those things because then it makes the other steps a lot easier and more pinpoint focused. Then step 3 is assess rentals. Okay, so now that you know where you want to live, you want to look at apartment complexes in that area that fit your needs. So the really good thing here to understand is not looking for the cheapest place or the most expensive, but a place that's within your budget, close as you can, and really understanding what the range of prices are. So let's say in this case, it's $1,600. So once you have that, that's your benchmark. Now you understand what's the price to rent, which is the first important number to actually establish, and then you would assess the real estate market. So now once you're assessing real estate, I suggest like Zillow, for example, and you're gonna go through to understand first, what is that monthly mortgage? And hopefully, if you're watching this video, you're in a position where you're able to put up at least 8% onto a house, right? 5% being the down payment and the additional 3% being the closing costs. So great job saving and putting yourself in a good position. So when you're assessing real estate, what you want to look at, right, is can you beat that rental price? So, and what does this mean? This means that you run a mortgage calculator, you assume whatever down payment you're putting, you assume your property taxes, insurance, right? And you look, can you get that monthly liability for your mortgage at or below? To get around $1,600, you're probably looking at, if I had to guess, I would say a $290,000 house. So that's really the 3 steps. So, and now there's going to be results from this step, right? So you have rent, you have buy. There's going to be 3 scenarios that can happen. 1, rent's about the same. 2, rent is more expensive than buying. Or step 3, rent is cheaper than buying, right? So that are the 3 scenarios once you go through this process. And now you want to think strategically based on your outcome. How are you going to drive your decision to rent or buy? So in the event that they're about the same, let's say you were able to find houses in that location for around $290,000, that's roughly equivalent to the $1,600 mortgage. There's some things you want to think about. Are you looking to settle down, right? Are you looking for geographic stability and it's a good location and it's an appreciating market? Then it makes sense to buy in that scenario, because you get the appreciation of the house, you get the equity pay down, right? A part of that $1,600 of your mortgage is going to go towards principal, and there's also tax benefits associated with it. But it might make sense to rent in this scenario if you move around a lot for your job, or you don't necessarily have enough saved up to get that house, to get that down payment low enough, or you're not in a position where you're really wanting to deal with the headaches of home ownership and things breaking and fixing and tweaks. It's a big responsibility, and it's more relaxing to rent because you have nothing to worry about. So moving on to the second piece, it's more expensive to rent than buy. In this scenario, right, your rent could be $1,800, but your mortgages are $1,400 to $1,500. You live in a very affordable area to buy. So this means that you're realistically going to want to buy if you can in that situation, because number one, you're going to get the immediate cash flow difference, right? Whatever the difference is between rent versus buy, that's essentially increasing your income every month. And again, you still have all those benefits from purchasing that we talked about: appreciation, equity pay down. So those are big benefits. So you really don't want to rent in these markets if you don't have to. I would consider renting if you're going to be there for 3 to 6 months. You know you're going to have to jump out, but it's hard to argue for renting in these types of environments unless you need to save up for a down payment. And then the last scenario to think through is buying is more expensive than renting. This happens in a lot of very hot real estate markets like New York, California, New Jersey, right? These areas, your homes realistically are like $600K for something decent that you enjoy. And that, again, don't be intimidated because you can find deals in every market. I'm a big believer in that. I just closed on one in New Jersey that I think is a steal and gets my home, my cost of living very low. But really, in these scenarios, it makes a lot of sense to rent. Don't let the typical societal pressure of you need to buy or else you're losing out on the American dream or anything like that. Really structurally assess what's on the market and do this analysis to drive yourself, because you're going to save yourself tremendous amounts of money and not have to lock up a big monthly house payment that is going to ruin your ability to save every month. So really consider that, and you have no overhead expenses. There's no lights fixing. Hey, you call up the landlord and get everything fixed. You have no responsibility. So it is a great thing, and don't feel like you're worse off than someone else who's buying because they have a huge mortgage and they're paying it off. Because so much of that money gets thrown away in the form of interest to the bank, property taxes to the county and state, and then insurance, expenses. That's not a great investment unless you kind of purchased here. Then houses are always a good investment, because let's say you jumped out of this house in 3 years. You know the rental market is hotter than the buy market, and you know you can cash flow that property, which is a great thing as an investor. So hopefully this gave you some tangible, tactical advice to go after and assess rent versus buy, and don't be lulled into the societal pressure of I need to buy or I'm losing money, because it might not make sense in that scenario. Thanks for tuning in to Live to Learn. If you like my content, feel free to subscribe and stay up to date with my latest good nuggets of information. If you have any other tips for rent versus buy, feel free to drop them in the comments and give me a thumbs up. Greatly appreciate it.